Hi, and welcome to ThreatTraq Essentials, where we'll take a look at some everyday cybersecurity lessons that we can learn from this week's ThreatTraq stories. I'm here with Jonathan Gonzalez. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you.
You were on the show this week. We had a lot of interesting stories. Now, the first one is really interesting because every week we give tips on the show and we talk about apps and downloading them. Right. We always say, what? Download them from where?
So downloading for an official application store like the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. And
it turns out that, although that's great advice, it's not foolproof. Tell me about the story and why that is.
Right. So while Google and Apple are very good at filtering through the submissions that are bad, sometimes they can miss a few, and that's what happened in this case. I believe there were 3 applications that got through, which had now been removed from the store, and I believe they have the ability to remove it from phones that might have had it installed. But in this case, the applications got through and people had installed them.
And what could these malicious applications potentially do?
So in this case, all you had to do was install it, and then the application would get privilege escalation, which means that the application could then give itself permission to do things, like look at things in your phone that you might not want them to have looked at.
Like contacts, photographs.
Right. Your Twitter account, your Facebook account, things, again, private things, without your knowledge in this case.
So how do people protect themselves? Even when you go to a reputable app store, what should they do?
So the first thing I would say is try to avoid applications that you've never heard of, even if you just want to try them. There are reasons why you would only want to recommend reputable apps, right? And this is one of those cases. Also, look at how many people have downloaded it and what kind of reviews. If you have something with very few downloads and no reviews, this might be a sign that, all right, maybe this is not an app that people know about. It just doesn't, even if it does the thing that you want, it might not be worth the risk.
So be suspicious when you see something like that.
Yeah, I mean, no reviews and very low downloads should definitely trigger something in you to say, okay, maybe I don't need this app right now. Let's see if it becomes popular. Let's see if people are using it. And even in that case, it could still mean that something's bad, but hopefully by then Google would have figured out, okay, this is a bad app. We're going to remove it from the store.
And it'll be gone.
And it'll be gone.
Let's talk about the story Mike Stayer brought to us about gas pumps and how there's being efforts made to fight credit card skimmers at gas pumps, which can be a problem. And it has to do with a new policy. Tell me about that.
Right, so this new policy has to do with liability, I believe. So the gas stations will now be liable for any fraudulent transaction that happens at the pumps. This was not the case, which was very surprising to me. So now these gas stations will likely have to either figure out if it's worth the risk, if the risk is worth the upgrades, or comply.
So basically they need to upgrade their pumps to have certain security procedures in them, like chip readers for the cards, encrypting transmissions. And they have to do this by October.
That's correct.
And so I guess the danger is that criminals may be like, okay, we have from now until October to go at it and really start taking advantage of skimmers.
Well, I think researchers are predicting that because this policy goes into effect in October, a lot of the gas stations will be persuaded to upgrade, which means that they have whatever many months, 9-10 months, to try to get at these gas stations, get as much money as possible before everybody upgrades their systems.
And in the meantime, what precautions should people take?
In our case in New Jersey, it's a little tough because we hand out a credit card to the person. But in most states, it would be helpful to maybe double check that there's no skimmers. I mean, sometimes they're really good and well hidden. If something seems suspicious on the machine that you're putting your card into, then maybe stop and think about that before you do that. Sometimes it's very obvious, sometimes it's not. Also, just watch your credit card transactions. If you see anything suspicious, call the credit card company right away. You might have been compromised. Unfortunately, some of the skimmers are so good, it's really hard to tell people watch out for them because they might not even know that they got skimmed. And this is why I think the policy is good, because now the gas stations have to figure out how to make this happen and be protected in a way that the consumer doesn't have to worry about it.
And let's talk about the story that you brought to us.
Right.
That one was about, actually, we talk a lot about ransomware.
Yeah.
We give people a lot of advice about ransomware,
Right.
but this was about some advice you encountered that we often overlook. Tell me what it is.
So if you've been a victim of ransomware and we're in the process of cleaning up and mitigating the issue, sometimes we might forget that in that process, other things might have happened. In this case, it would be that passwords of people that were using the systems could have also been compromised and have been sent to other places to maybe be sold or used for other purposes. Now these are accounts of your employees maybe, or if you have guest systems, maybe of people that have used your computers. So if there was any compromise, assume anybody that had ever touched your systems needs to reset all their passwords, period.
So it's not just, let's just say I work somewhere at a company that's been the victim of a ransomware attack.
Right.
So it's not just the company that needs to be concerned about that. If all the people who work there, especially if they use their business machines to get into personal accounts, all those passwords could have been compromised too.
That is correct. So in the process of getting the company infected with ransomware, they might have installed other things on these systems that would have stolen any password on that system. That included you just going to your bank account on a company computer, your personal email. Maybe you just went to check out Twitter or Facebook. We saw in the report things like LastPass, which is a password manager. So your master password for every other password could have been compromised, right? So these are things that, just be aware that if that was something that happened at your company, even if your company didn't tell you, you should do that. Reset all your passwords, every single one that might have touched any of the systems, or even if you forgot, I guess my advice would be reset them all anyway.
And what if, like you bring a personal computer to work and you just got on the network like wirelessly, is that also those passwords like from that computer?
Depends. So that's actually an interesting question, because that brings a different policy thing, in which is bring your own device. Now I guess there are companies that allow this. So if you are in a company where you are allowed to bring your own device, where we're connecting to that network, there is a potential that your personal system was compromised. Now it's hard to say. I assume that you would have noticed because your files will now be encrypted. But in the case, so if that is the case, yes, if you're solving the problem, getting your backups back on, and you're trying to fix your personal computer, don't forget that after you do all that, make sure that you also reset all your passwords, because they were likely compromised. So yeah, I think that the advice applies no matter what.
And John Hogaboom suggested that there's one password that you should change first. Tell us about that and why.
First passwords that you start changing are all your email passwords. Now the reason for this is that a lot of other accounts usually use your email to reset those passwords. So if you get a hold of your email accounts and change those passwords as quickly as possible, that minimizes the risk on an attacker trying to steal your accounts, right? Because now, at least if for some reason they get to other accounts, you have your emails with a password that you know is good, and can now maybe start resetting other things that might have gotten compromised beyond that. So emails first is very good advice, and then continue on and reset everything.
Well, it is great advice. So thanks for being on the show, Jonathan. Yep. And thank you all for watching. Please remember to like our videos and subscribe to our channel. And as always, you can take a deeper dive into any of these stories by clicking on the playlist below. We'll see you next time.